I don't think I've ever had so many emotions in such a short amount of time while playing a game, but honestly, that was my experience with Herdling. If you haven't heard of Herdling, this is a game that was introduced to us at the last Nintendo Indie Direct. This game comes to us from the same people who made Far, an award-winning indie game that came out a few years ago. But honestly, even before I knew who made Herdling, as soon as I saw it on that Indie Direct, I knew I had to check it out. And thanks to all of you for liking and subscribing and interacting the way you do with my videos, the publishers decided to take a chance and let me review the game. So a big shout out to them and a big shout out for all of you guys, because without you guys, I wouldn't be able to review any of these games or get some of these amazing opportunities. And with that being said, let's get into Herdling. So with most of these reviews, you start off with the story because it's sort of the easy thing to start off with. In many ways, it sets the stage for the entire game and also for the audience to decide if this is something that they really want to get into. And this is where I was a little unsure. So I wasn't really sure how to talk about the story, as the story is an incredibly important part of any game, and Herdling is no different. But to say that the story is concrete would be completely false. To say that it's completely fleshed out and that it's presented to you on a platter also be completely false. Because you see, a number of the details of this game are really up to interpretation and just how you perceive some of the details in the game. The TLDR of this is that you're essentially a little girl who herds these amazing creatures called calicorns. As you travel, you collect more and more of these calicorns as you guide them towards their destination. And if someone said, hey, that is the story, they would be correct, but it would be like saying Game of Thrones is about a bunch of people who want to be the king. Yeah, that's true, but also there's so many details that you leave out, or that maybe just don't capture the essence of the game itself. For instance, herding, and that seems to be what you're doing. You are guiding these beautiful calicorns into this destination, but really, it's more like you're guiding them on a calling. It's like these creatures know they have to go on this arduous, dangerous, exciting, sometimes beautiful journey. And it's a journey that they know they have to go on. And in many ways, I think they want to go on this journey, but they just need guidance. They're not exactly sure how to get where they're trying to go. And if you want to get really deep into it, you could question your character, the journey itself. The calicorns, are they actually even calicorns, or are they a metaphor for lost souls that are trying to find their way back home? But I'll leave all of those interpretations up to you and figure out what you think the story is really about, or maybe it's just a little girl herding some wondrous creatures to a destination. And just to be clear, that's all this game really needs to be. The calicorns themselves add so much personality, as each one you interact with really does have their own characteristics. The first one you meet can actually be a little intimidating until you really bond with him and he becomes incredibly loyal and loving. There are some calicorns that are actually just a little mischievous and they don't want to listen to you right off the bat. Not that they want to cause problems, they just have their own little way of doing things. There are some that really just want you to play fetch with them all the time. Some that actually want to be cleaned a lot. The more you interact with them, the more you'll find out about them, and there's just so much depth to these wonderful little creatures. And here's a little challenge for you. So I named all of my calicorns after a specific thing, or a group of things or people. If you can be the first person to guess what they are, then you can win a $10 gift card. Now, I don't actually use a ton of my original game footage here because most of it was done late game and I didn't want to give too much away, but I will sneak a few clips here or there, and I will definitely show you guys my curated herd. And you really do develop an attachment to them, and I think that they make up a ton of the emotion in the game as well. There is something to be said for the environment, the beautiful vivid colors, all of that, which I'll get to later, and of course the music. But the calicorns themselves become incredibly important to you. You become really protective of them because you see, unfortunately, during this trip they can die, and it's incredibly sad when they do. Usually you developed a relationship with them, and it's really sad to see that under your protection they passed away. But you're also reminded by them as well, as sometimes when you get lost in the game, one of the calicorns that had passed away will show up in spirit form and sort of guide you where to go. At the end of a long day, you also find yourselves at these bonfires that you create, and all of your calicorns sit around it. This is when you can take care of them, you can feed them, hug them, play with them, whatever. And around the bonfire, any of the calicorns that passed away will still be there in spirit form. And so it's sort of sad, but yet it's also kind of cool to know that they're still with you. So as we talked about, the main goal or the main mechanic of this game is just to herd these creatures in one direction. direction. And it's a relatively simple task, as well as really simple button prompt. It's not very difficult to learn how to actually play the game, but to actually master it is a different story. It takes a little while to get used to actually herding them in the direction that you want them to go. And you definitely have to be mindful of different obstacles that could be on the way. Anything from predators trying to hurt them, to spiky thorns that can cause them damage, or even parts of the ground that give way to giant holes that they could slip into. And of course, throughout the game, there are different puzzles. Most of the puzzles are relatively easy to figure out, and they don't really hold you up too long, but there can be a couple, especially towards the end, that can take a little bit of time to actually figure out. But I have to say that one of the funnest things about the game is when you hit like a wide open space, and it's a perfect time to just run as fast as you can. You and the Calicorns are just going full blast. There's all of these vivid colors flying around the screen, coming from the Calicorns, but also from some of the flowers that are in these giant fields. It's a really fun, liberating feeling, especially after you just navigated through a particularly tricky area. And one of the cool visual aspects of the game is that the Calicorns themselves kind of take on the colors of some of the flowers that they run through. As I talked about before, these, vivid flower fields not only add like a really cool visual component to the Calicorns, they actually have an effect. Red flowers will give an instantaneous boost. The blue flowers will actually fill up their boost gauge, and the yellow ones sort of work as a component to some of the puzzles. You see, some of the puzzles can only be achieved after you've completed like an illustration of the Calicorns and you, and the only way to get this sort of spiritual ink, if you will, is through these yellow flowers. It sounds a little bit more complicated than it is. It's really pretty simple, but it does just add like another visual element to the game that I think is incredibly cool. And it's just another one of the ways that you can tell that the design of this game was masterfully done. And another way that you can actually see that is through the music. You see, as you're charging through different biomes, the composer actually uses different instruments, and while setting the stage for any events that might be happening, whether they be kind of sad or exciting or whatever, these songs with specific instruments feel like they are creating the culture of these certain areas. Now, the only place that I would say that this game has any weak element to it, I would say is performance, and it's only towards the end of the game. During certain events, the frame rate will kind of fluctuate a little bit, and you can tell a little bit of stuttering, and I don't know what this is called, but at one point I had moved the camera, and it was almost like my character was standing on the camera itself. It only happened in one specific area, and again, that was also towards the end of the game in this very snowy area, but I never had any crashes or anything of that nature. In fact, those few little hiccups that I mentioned could be completely fixed with the day one patch. Usually a ton of these games do come out with a day one patch, so they may already have addressed this problem, but again, like, it's no big deal. It was just slight little issues here or there, and really those were the only negative things that I saw about this game. Ultimately, I really enjoyed this game. I think that this game scores like a 9.3 out of 10. It's a type of game that is really difficult to put down, and one that will have you thinking about what you just experienced. When you're not playing the game, you'll still be thinking like, I wonder what that meant, or I wonder what these ruins were from. All of these things will kind of pop up through your head, and that's always a sign of a good game. But anyway, that's just my thoughts about Herdling. Let me know what your thoughts are. Is this a game that you've been excited for? Did you see it during the Indie Direct? Is it one that's now up on your radar? Anything and everything down in that comment section below is much appreciated. I love each and every one of you guys. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.